I'm not gonna lie to you today, guys. It's gonna be a tough one because word problems are not always our forte, but it's not as bad as you think. We're gonna make sure that we feel confident in how we're determining what each expression means and then how to translate those. So we'll start off with basically this idea of what is a number. Well, pretty basic. If you ever see the phrase a number, what we're saying is X, right? That's what we're saying. When we say decreasing a number, decreasing basically means to subtract, okay, to subtract. But I'll remind you that when we do subtraction, something like less, when you hear the words less than or subtracted from, things like that, it's often in the opposite order, okay? It's that opposite order thing. Um, so be careful on that. We'll talk about that a little bit later, probably maybe not till tomorrow, but we'll see. Opposite order. The square of a number, that's a new one for you guys, but we already know that this is the number, so the square of a number is simply that x, and it's being squared, right? Increasing a number, that one should be pretty easy. We're simply adding, right? We're adding. It's not the opposite order, but it's adding. We can do the opposite order if we want to. This one's new. When we say the product, you guys learned this back in middle school, but the word product means multiplication. Product of a number and let's just say 4. Well, if it's a number, that's x, and 4, but we'll write the 4 first. So that's just 4x. So the product of a number and 4 would just be 4x. We've talked about this way back in Unit 1 when it came to our regular consecutive numbers. But remember, our consecutive integers or consecutive numbers are x, x plus 1, x plus 2, and it would go on forever, but we pretty much just get to those first 3. The difference, though, when it comes to consecutive, even versus odd, remember this. If it was consecutive, even, and or odd, even though the even and odd numbers are not the same, algebraically they are, we still start with x, whether it's consecutive or consecutive, even and odd, you still start with x. But then instead of x plus 1, we skip to x plus 2, and then x plus 4, and so on and so forth. So just a little reminder there of how consecutive numbers that are even and odd are going up by 2s as opposed to just going up by 1. So it's important that we have those expressions because our goal today is basically threefold. First thing you want to be able to do is I'm just going to write them here. You don't write this down yet, but our goal today is to actually create the equation, right? So you're going to be able to create an equation. And then once you have created that equation, the second thing we're going to be able to do is you're going to have to factor that equation, right? And the whole reason we're factoring is so that once we have factored, you're going to be able to solve, okay? So there's a lot here. We're going to spend today and a bit of tomorrow's lesson on this as well. But that's our our three-step process. So let's start this off. When the square of a number, square of a certain number, I'm going to go ahead and underline that because that's one of our expressions already, is diminished by 9, by what? By 9 times the number, that same number we're already talking about, the result is 36. Okay, so lots going on here, and I'm going to color code everything here. Going back to the beginning, the green one, square of a certain number. Well, that certain number is x, and we're squaring it. It's the square of a certain number. And then it says it's diminished by. To diminish means to take away. So we're going to be subtracting. Well, what are we subtracting? We're subtracting 9 times the number. 9 times that same number. That same number is x, right? That same number that before that we took the square of there in green, we're now multiplying times 9. And it says the result is, aka equals 36. So there we go. Step 1 is done. We've created our equation. And I'm going to kind of speed up the rest of this so you can see the process here. But now that we've created our equation, we want to solve it. So let's get it equal to 0 first. X squared minus 9x minus 36 equals 0. And we can factor this. This meets our little criteria. Remember the secret where our a value is 1. So if I kind of do this in my head for us, the factors of 36, right? The factors of 36 that add up to -9. So the factors of -36 that add up to -9, I believe that's going to be, yeah, -12, -12, and +3. So if it's -12 and +3, we can jump straight to those two binomials, neg x minus 12 and x plus 3, which then we solve, okay? So x equals +12 and x equals -3. Now, in this case, we didn't say anything, but I'm going to just kind of start warning you, letting you know now. When we get these two answers, 9 times out of 10, the one that they're going to actually ask for is always going to be the positive one. Unless they literally say the negative one. There's nothing wrong with this -3 right now. Later on, there will be something wrong with it where we'll just ignore it entirely. But right now, just kind of to get in the habit of it, I want you to really just keep the positive answer. We're going to have them both there. But for now, we focus most of our attention on that positive answer. Okay, so there's our first one. It takes a little bit to translate it, to get it equal to 0, to factor it, and then to solve it. I'm just going to do one more quick one, then we'll move on to the next video. Square of a number, that's x squared, right, exceeds the number. So that is equal to, but it's bigger than it. It exceeds the number by 72. So in order for these two things to be equal to each other, right, the square of some number is bigger than the number by 72. So now we could set that equal to 0. To get it equal to 0, we subtract over the x and the 72. And then we can factor using our little trick again. The -72, the a value is 1, so we're allowed to do the trick. The factors would be -9 and +8, which means my solutions are +9 and -8. And again, we focus most of our attention, almost always, on the positive answer. So that would be our solution there. In the next video, we're going to start looking at these idea of consecutive answers, consecutive numbers.